Greetings, beautiful people. Welcome to my channel, Mind Body Alchemist. My name is Francesca Bleckner, and I support high performers in releasing and integrating the stress patterns held in their body and nervous system through body-based coaching and somatic wisdom so that they can bring their gifts, their soul medicine out into the world without the burnout. So today I'm going to be talking about nervous system mastery and how hyperindependence drives illness, burnout, and overdrive. So what is overdrive? Overdrive is living in that high alertness. Now, if you've seen in some of my previous videos, I was speaking about hyperindependence and the nervous system pathway that lives on, and it's very much that fight, flight, overdrive. People who are in patterns of hyperindependence are often very much go, 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 very driven, but they use their willpower to drive forwards, as opposed to having that real, more grounded, the yin with the yang, the restoration and the output. So what happens with overdrive when they are continually in that overdrive? It's like having the foot on the pedal of the gas continuously without braking. And your body needs to move between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. They both work interdependently throughout the day, through the different cycles of the day. When you wind down, you're more in that supposed to be more in that parasympathetic rest, heal, digest. But what happens with overdrive is they are constantly overriding their physiology. It's just like constantly overriding the brakes and slowing down by pushing through. And I did this many, many years ago when I worked as a personal trainer for about 10-15 years. I was constantly in go, go, go mode. I was working on the go, and I mean, I had my clients in different areas, so I was constantly on the go, driving from one client to the other. I was very active. I was teaching classes at the same time, sometimes finishing very, very late, and I was continually overriding my physiology. When I felt exhausted, I still had to show up in that, high energy mode, and eventually that led to burnout. And so this is what happens with overdrive, because your body isn't designed to continuously push out the stress hormones, the cortisol and adrenaline. And now stress does get a bad rap. Stress hormones gets a bad rap, like cortisol. It's not that cortisol isn't an issue. The issue if it's constantly being pumped out and there isn't enough space for rest and recovery, so your system cannot come back. It's a little bit like using your phone constantly and never charging the batteries. You're going to be operating from a minimal bandwidth and trying to override that. Eventually it's going to get depleted. So in terms of health, it has a huge influence on health. The number one is burnout. Now, a lot of high performers, entrepreneurs, leaders, coaches are great entrepreneurs, have these patterns of hyperindependence and overdrive, and it gives them that boost, that acceleration when they're starting their business and in their entrepreneurship journey, because there is an element where you have to, you have to be very driven and you use a lot of willpower, but constantly operating from that space does lead to burnout, which happens a lot in the entrepreneurial and business world. And so that burnout will show up as you're sleeping, however long you're sleeping for, but you wake up feeling still depleted, feeling not rested. And this is often because issues with switching off as well, and being wired a sense of feeling wired, but you're tired. And there's an imbalance of the hormones. It's like the stress hormones are continuously up, but they're not getting that deep restful sleep. They're not releasing enough melatonin at night, which is going to help with the deep restorative sleep. And this is often because they find it really hard to switch off, and they're constantly on, or maybe still working late into the evening and overstimulated. So their nervous system never really gets the time to drop into that rest, digest and heal. And all that juiciness happens at night, but instead they're waking up in the morning not feeling rested. And another big one is, as I speak about this in the somatic patterns as well, and how hyperindependence shows up in the body, a lot of jaw tension. So TMJ, jaw dysfunction, from that continual grinding, clenching of the jaw, biting down, particularly at night. So when I worked in the city, when I used to do body work, I had a lot of clients that were city professionals, and so many of them were prescribed mouth guards for grinding their teeth at night. But it wasn't really addressing the root, which was stress, and where that was coming from. So it was like it's a band-aid to the issue. So a lot of jaw dysfunction. Then we have anxiety as well. When you constantly have your foot on the pedal and the brakes, and you're in that continual stress response, over time that becomes chronic. So even if it's like that low level overdrive continuously and overriding your physiology, eventually in time it becomes like chronic stress, anxiety, because you're not breathing fully. When you breathe fully using the diaphragm, that sends a message to the brain that, I'm safe, there's no threat. But every time you are continuously releasing the stress chemicals into your system, that's sending a message to your brain that there's a threat. I need to be on high alert. And so being in overdrive leads to feeling on high alert all the time, hyper-vigilance, reactivity. It impacts mood, that reactivity, which then spills out into all areas of your life, not just business or work, but perhaps with your friendships or in relationships, or even you see people on the road, like getting so angry, road rage, beeping their horns when someone just perhaps cuts them up, right? So easily reactive, impacts the mood, get irritated quickly, frustrated, can't switch off. And so anxiety is big, mood swings are big, asthma, shallow breathing. So if you're always in that shallow breath, the breath becomes restricted, and they may trigger asthma. Heart palpitations, again, constantly wired, constantly in high alert. The heart is racing, constantly having cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline pumping out into your system. Heart rate is higher, blood pressure might be higher, and heart palpitations, you might find like racing heart. And if that continues in that state, if you continue to override your physiology, you might find like respiratory issues, heart issues that show up. Also, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, because what's happening is, again, in that overdrive of the stress hormones being pumped out, when in fight and flight, sympathetic dominance of the nervous system, then glucose is mobilized into the bloodstream, preparing you to fight or run. Okay, so it's being dumped into the bloodstream in order to fuel the muscles to fight or run. So imagine if it's a life and death situation, fight the tiger or run from the tiger. But what's happening if you are just sitting at your desk, that blood sugar isn't really being used up. It's not being mobilized. And then eventually that's where insulin resistance can come in, because then the glucose is not able to get into the cells efficiently. It's not being uptaken by the cells. And so that insulin resistance then can lead to type 2 diabetes. So if we link it back to what's going on actually at a physiological level, looking at the whole picture, mentally, emotionally, physiologically, and these patterns, then we start to see the impact that has on hormonal health, on sleep, on tension patterns held in the body. So they're the main ones I wanted to go over. Now, if you haven't already taken my nervous system archetype quiz, I recommend that you take that, because that's going to help with identifying the dominant patterns that you may be experiencing right now. And all of these archetypes and these patterns are experiences that we may move in and out of. They don't define you, but it's really supportive just to understand what might be happening in that landscape. So I'll drop the link for the quiz below. And I also have a 15-minute somatic reset, which is £22. And that works with specifically unwinding the somatic patterns held in the jaw, the diaphragm, the psoas, and throughout the whole body. And it helps to recode, rewire the nervous system out of these high alert patterns. That is linked to Overdrive. And thirdly, if you want to go deeper, and if this landed for you and you feel like I don't want to do this alone and you want some support, then I do have a one-to-one embodied mastery program, a 6-month one-to-one program where I work with my clients globally, online, and take them through a deep process, a deep journey of transformation. So I'll drop some info about that below, and you can reach out, book a call, and see if we are a resonant match. See you in the next video. Much love.